I just sort of started jogging my memory, so the stuff is still kind of coming up. I jotted some of it down, and later on I'll read what I wrote, and then some of it is a little self-indulgent. Yeah. I decided to call it LSD ... just the high points ... or leery about Leary, which I was, yeah. Which I was, though, well, you could call it King Leary. Yeah. Yeah, King Leary, I thought so. See, that has something to do with my sense of him, actually.
Jim, would you like to make a selection tonight?
Yeah. Yeah, on trumpet.
On trumpet. On roulette. The label was roulette.
Yeah.
And the copyright, or the date of the release of the album?
Released 72 and cut in 1960.
Maynard Ferguson. I heard that Maynard is playing, what did you say normally he's playing?
In Lancaster, Pennsylvania. 2
in
weeks.
2 weeks from now. So Lancaster, 2 weeks from now, if you're down that area. Aldous Huxley, The Doors of Perception, copyright 1956, and this on page 43. The sum of evil, Pascal remarked, would be much diminished if men could only learn to sit quietly in their rooms. Page 43. Aldous Huxley. Gentlemen, we have only 20 minutes to accomplish the first part of this performance tonight. We're trying to get this all on a 20-minute cassette. So please, as you make your opening remarks, keep your time down to 30 seconds this evening. When you hear this tone, 30 seconds, we'll have a lapse. Please just do what you're doing. Michael?
I'm going to be reading from Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs. This is on page 53. All streets of the city slope down between deepening canyons to a vast kidney-shaped plaza full of darkness. Walls of street and plaza are perforated by dwelling cubicles and cafes, some a few feet deep, others extending out of sight in a network of rooms and corridors. At all levels, crisscross of bridges, catwalks, cable cars, catatonic youths dressed as women in gowns of burlap and rotten rags.
Thank you, Michael. We also have Michael Kirby on the videotape from a time when he couldn't be here, and we used to have his image up on a videotape. Run that tape with you, Jim. This is a home variety VHS system, so please bear with us.
I'll take off my hat. And then I'll be reading from Alan W. Watts, Nature, Man, and Woman. The first sentence of Nature, Man, and Woman is, when Christians first distinguished themselves from pagans, the word pagan meant country dweller. Jeff?
I'll be reading tonight from various works of Dr. Timothy Leary, including a transcript of this record album, LSD. This is from side 1 of that recording. What is consciousness? Consciousness is energy that is received and decoded by a physiological structure. There are as many levels of consciousness available to the human being as there are structures, anatomical organs inside the body for decoding different sources of energy. Specifically and statistically, there are hundreds of levels of consciousness whirling around inside your nervous system and your cellular systems. Each one.
I'm Jack Kerouac, On the Road, page 217. It was no longer east-west, but magic south. We saw a vision of the entire Western Hemisphere rock-a-ribbing clear down to the Tierra del Fuego and us flying down the curve of the world into other tropics and other worlds. Man, this will finally take us to it. No?
I'll be reading tonight from works by Allen Ginsberg. I have here his journals from the early 60s, early 50s, early 60s, and 5 volumes of his poetry. Also, some correspondence. This is the Burroughs-Ginsberg correspondence. This is the Ginsberg-Neil Cassidy correspondence. This is Straight Heart's Delight, which is love poems and selected letters between Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky. On the back it says, Straight Heart's Delight is a crucial volume for understanding the Beat movement and 2 of its most prominent members. Included are gay love poems by Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky.
I have 2 books tonight. The first book, Timothy Leary, The Madness of the 60s and Me, by Dr. Charles W. Slack. The second book is Whatever Happened to Timothy Leary, by John Bryan. It's an unauthorized biography. Now, if you notice on the front here is a cartoon, 3 hippies sitting in a coffee shop. The first hippie says, "Dig it, man. To me, it's like we all exist in some weird kind of collective hallucination of the world." On the back. Get to it later.
I have a transcript here from the book, Whatever Happened to Timothy Leary, and I'll just be reading quotes from Timothy's son, Jackie Leary. I didn't think they were a drug or bad or anything, you know. I'd give them to my dog. I remember once sitting in the kitchen, and I must have taken a few, but I'd forgotten, you know. So I was looking at my dog, and he was like licking some beer this guy had brought. He's a psychiatrist, and he had a briefcase, and it had these leather flaps, and my dog started chewing on them. And we put a little salt on it, and he was chewing away. And he must have been stoned, and so was I. So I was watching him, and all of a sudden it must have been a hallucination. He seemed to be standing still and jumping up in the air at the same time. And maybe he was, and maybe I'm stoned, but I remember saying, "Did you see that?" Page 47.
Page 49. And now someone produced a phonograph and put a record on the turntable. I listened with pleasure, but experienced nothing comparable to my scene apocalypses or flowers
Yeah,
or
it was
flannel.
a beautiful afternoon, sort of late in the afternoon, and there was this beautiful sort of late, strong winter sun. And I came in, and we met Tim, and I just remember him standing there with his arms around the kids, and they all looked very depressed. They were all really very down. See, I guess the suicide of the wife or whatever, you know, is fairly recent. I don't know, you can just sort of feel it, you know, it's kind of air, you know, everything's kind of held in, you know. And then there was this small little Japanese woman who did everything. And we all went inside. This is one of the breaks when there were no pills, see. They would come in from Sandoz, see, Switzerland. These little shipments of these pink psilocybin pills. And this was like a dry period. Tim had this candy dish, this amazing 3-tiered candy dish. You know, they had these little round, you know, little dishes on each level. You just go out and swing around and everything. And they're always full of these little pink pills. Just the I still hear the sound of the pills on the ceramic, you know, candy dish. But anyway, the candy dish was empty this weekend. You know. So there was this atmosphere of waiting.
Carl ran into a park and found an empty bench beside a bronze faun with symbols. "Let your hair down, chicken, you'll feel better." The tourist was leaning over him, his camera swinging in Carl's face like a great dangling tit. "Fuck off, you!" Carl saw something noble and hideous reflected back in the Queen's Spade animal brown eyes. "Oh, I wouldn't be calling any names if I were you, chicken. You're hooked too. I saw you coming out of the Institute." "What do you mean by that?" Carl demanded. "Oh, nothing. Nothing at all."
170 East 2nd Street, NYC, December 4, 1960. Dear Neil, Merry Christmas. Forgive my silence, I will write. Peter and I were up at Harvard last week eating synthetic mushrooms, visiting Leary. Very high. The revolution has begun. You are it now, the God. We're starting a plot to get everyone in power in America high. Hurrah.
On the back, the cartoon continues. You notice the first hippie has disappeared. The second hippie says, "Cat split man." And the third hippie says, "Dude's got a beautiful head."
The mythic folk heroes of our times will be the psychedelic drug outlaws, the science fiction Johnny Appleseeds who build secret laboratories, scrounge the basic chemicals, experiment to develop new ecstasy pills, who test their homemade sacraments on their own bodies and the flesh of their trusting friends.
Care of U.S. Consul, Tangiers, Morocco, August 3, 1961. Dear Peter, Leary was great here, calmed everyone. Bill dug him. Gregory went out to casino with him, happy. Bill meeting him in England late this month. They both go to Harvard, where Bill will experiment with white noise and sensory deprivation machines, etc.
And then there was the famous Acid King, Augustus Owsley Stanley III, electronic whiz kid and fireball chemist who'd made his first $1 million in profits from synthesizing and selling acid by late 1966. Owsley acid was long considered the purest and most potent ever produced outside the Sandoz labs.
I think Bill and Leary at Harvard are going to start a beautiful consciousness alteration of the whole world. Actually, for real, Leary thinks this is the beginning of a new world.
The man who comes back through the door in the wall will never be quite the same as the man who went out. He'll be wiser but less cocksure, happier but less satisfied, humbler in acknowledging his ignorance, yet better equipped to understand the relationship of words to things, of systematic reasoning to the unfathomable mystery which it tries forever vainly to comprehend.
Yeah, no, my master's really didn't have to do with anything specific, actually. My PhD was in literature, Faulkner and Renaissance literature. Anyways, they had a woman, this amazing woman. Now this Japanese woman that came with him and I guess was the maid, the governess, his secretary, his lover. I guess she was all these things.
I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical.
Here's some things that Dr. Timothy Leary told the author. Number 1, we must achieve freedom of the nervous system before we try anything else. Number 2, I'm a pure hedonist and I want to have a ball. Number 3, you are God.
You know, he was my father, so I loved him because he was my father. But I never loved him because I thought he was really great. I don't know when I started to hate him. It's sort of something I felt but never really thought about when I was really young, and then it sort of gradually built up until I was thinking about it all the time in my head. I thought he was an asshole even when I was 7 or so.
The dark and mysterious Ohio and Cincinnati at dawn, then Indiana fields again, and St. Louis as ever in the great valley clouds of afternoon, the muddy cobbles and the Montana logs, the broken steamboat, the ancient signs, the grass and the ropes of the river, the endless poem, by night Missouri, Kansas fields, Kansas night cows in the secret wilds, cracker box towns with a sea of the end of every street, dawn in Abilene, East Kansas grasses become West Kansas rangelands that climb up to the hill of the
We
west.
have Ellen Watts on the videotape.
In theological circles, pantheism has long been a definitely damning label, and those who like their religious and philosophical opinions to be robust and definite are also inclined to use the word mysticism with the same kind of opprobrium. They associate it with mist, with vagueness, with clouding of issues and blurring of distinctions. Therefore, from this standpoint, nothing could be more ghastly than mystical pantheism or pantheistic nature mysticism, which is just what the attitude of Kwan appears to produce.
Holy Peter, Holy Allen, Holy Solomon, Holy Lucian, Holy Kerouac, Holy Hunky, Holy Burroughs, Holy Cassidy, Holy the unknown buggard and suffering beggars, Holy the hideous
Holy
human
Ghost.
angels.
I am, and for as long as I can remember, I have always been a poor visualizer. Words, even the fragment words of poets, do not evoke pictures in my mind. No hypnagogic visions greet me on the verge of sleep. When I recall something, the memory does not present itself to me as vividly seen as an object or an event.
Yeah, I never had any experience. I never tried to fly. I never had a bad trip. Oh, sure. Well, I don't know if I would say I saw God, you know, but I certainly felt it in the universe. I mean, everything was like glowing. I mean, is that what you mean? But I think that didn't feel like a hallucination, but maybe it was. But I never visually hallucinated. But anyway, not very often. Not very often visually hallucinate. I seem to orally hallucinate a lot more. It's a sound, yeah.
Leary tells me he agrees with Bill that poetry is finished because he feels the world is really moving on to a new super-consciousness that might eliminate words and ideas altogether.
Excuse me, Norman, there's just so few minutes left. I think if there's one or two requests from the audience of one author or another, we could respond to your call. Would you care to hear?
Kerouac.
Kerouac.
Joyce.
Joyce is not being read this evening.
Don't die to go to heaven. Start on Dr. Pepper and end up on whiskey.
Another request?
He couldn't have kept it.
It came about that one day I happened to be walking through the alley behind Freddie's house. Alongside sauntered the brother closest to my age, Jimmy. It's from the first
One last request.
Walt Disney.
Disney's not there. Watts. Watts was the first. If you can roll that tape.
For as the nonsense of the madman is a babble of words for its own fascination, the nonsense of nature and of the sage is the perception that the ultimate meaninglessness of the world contains the same hidden joy as its transience and emptiness. If we seek the meaning in the past, the chain of cause and effect vanishes like the wake of a ship. If we seek it in the future, it fades out like the beam of a searchlight in the night sky. If we seek it in the present, it's as elusive as flying spray, and there's nothing to grasp. But when only the seeking remains and we seek to know what this is, it suddenly turns into the mountains and waters, the skies and the stars, sufficient to themselves, with no one left to seek anything from them.
Gentlemen, I'm moving on to Arthur Kessler, The Ghost in the Machine. Kessler was born in Budapest, 1905, and I'll choose a selection at random. Page 245. Art is a school of self-transcendence, but so is a patriotic rally, a voodoo session, a war dance. It is a triumph of the imaginative powers of our minds that we are capable of shedding tears over the death of an Anna Karenina, who only exists as a printer's ink on paper or a shadow on a screen. The illusions of the stage are ultimately derived from sympathetic magic, from the partial identification of spectator, actor, and the god or hero whom he impersonates. But this magic is highly sublimated. The process of identification is tentative, partial, a momentary suspension of disbelief. It does not impair the critical faculties, does not undermine personal identity. But the voodoo session or Nuremberg rally does just that.
When we started our research at Harvard, I wrote to Arthur Kessler, telling him about the mystical experiences we were encountering and inviting him to participate in a love feast. A few days before his scheduled arrival, a phone call came from New York. In somber tones, Kessler said that he had already taken psilocybin with a psychiatrist in Michigan and had a hellish paranoid experience. He had no desire whatsoever to make the voyage again, transformed into the claws of a predatory bird.
I mentioned before that I wrote something, so I'm just going to read it now. A small rectangular yellow room with dark wood den couches and chairs, and walls of books in the dark shelves. Alice, the Japanese woman who did everything for Tim, was there. Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky were there, but they were upstairs already, the love drug. But Peter's gone brother was around somewhere. There was great excitement. Arthur Kessler had arrived and had done it. There was much speculation because Kessler had come out hostile in print about the idea of using a drug to arrive at a mystical state. But he had come at Leary's invite. He was here, he was somewhere, wandering around in bliss. Suddenly, Kessler walks or floats into the room. "How are you?" Tim says.
How are you?
He just smiles. He runs his hand through his hair. It becomes wild. He catches sight of himself in a mirror. "Oh, I must comb my hair."
Oh, I must comb my hair.
"Tim, you look fine."
You look fine.
"I must."
I must.
Arthur exits to go up big center stairs to his bedroom. Suddenly, we hear him screaming, freaking out, babbling something about in my room, on my bed, 69, a door slammed. He comes back downstairs. He is clutching a comb. He sticks his head in the door and just screams. "What's the matter?"
What's the
We
matter?
all get up and go toward him. "Don't touch me," he screams and runs out of the house. Peter's brother appears and is upset by Arthur's freaking out and runs to the window pointing. Then he freaks out and runs outside. We all run to the window to look. Soon Allen Ginsberg comes down wearing a blanket, calling Billy, Billy, Arthur, runs outside. Much door slamming. Allen gets Arthur to come back inside. He talks him down. Peter comes downstairs and stands naked in the doorway, a radiant dish.